Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. Welcome to Have You Seen? I am recording this introduction backwards. And I think this is how I'm going to do it from now on, because I never know when I sit down with these artists really why I've invited them on the pod until after we've spoken. And today I was joined by Phillip Toledano, whose most recent series is an AI-generated Deceit. And when I first learned about it, I thought, what on earth is this guy doing? He's conceived of a show where he is not the author of these works, that he found a negative or a box of negatives in amongst his father's things, his dead father's things, and that he then went and printed them, and that they are a series of gorgeous photographs from the 1950s in New York, street photography kind of at its best, discovery, like Vivian Maier. And the show has launched at Fotografiska Berlin, kind of under that banner. But Phillip Toledano is an artist who has for years been tapping at the edges of AI and incorporating it into his work. And actually, the images that he's producing are great photographs. And I mean that they sit within a history of photography that's great, that you know they're AI, but they are aesthetically beautiful and they grab you. And I like them. And I'm surprised by that because I have dismissed so much of AI. But what also happens in our conversation is that we talk about some of his bigger work. And I didn't do a great job of really addressing the huge things that he talks about in his work, whether they're political or about his dead parents and dead sister, or about the sort of trauma of becoming a parent, which is what happens to all of us, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's that part of Phillip's project that is most engaging. And whether he's using AI or a camera or making sculptures doesn't much matter. He's just a great artist. And I'm so excited for you to discover his work through our conversation, by going to his website, by following him on Instagram. Do all the things, because I promise you, you'll be rewarded. Welcome to today's episode of Have You Seen, where I am thrilled to be inviting Phillip Toledano to the podcast. We, I must admit, have actually met in real life, but only very recently. I think it was last week, it might have been the week before. Phillip will correct me when I let him interrupt. But until such point, what I want to do is quickly discuss the project that got my attention and then kind of forced me to invite him on the pod because I've got questions that he needs to answer. Starting with, who was Edward Trevor and what is all his work about? So Phillip, you're in the hot seat today. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Thank you for forcing me to come on the pod.
I did not force you. I asked you so
You
nicely.
said you forced me in the introduction.
I did kind of force you. I think that we should probably just talk about this new series and then work backwards and talk about the old series, because that is kind of how I encountered your work. And I do want to set the stage properly, not just in the ramble of an introduction that I just gave. But I first saw your work at the Mia Art Fair in Milan. And there was like a haunting, eerie photo of a house that grabbed my attention. And literally from across the aisles, I was like, what is that? Is someone doing like a Christo wrapping of a house? Or is this like a movie set? Or what is that? So I walked over and tried to investigate your work, but couldn't quite figure it out. And then we met in real life. at one of those art fair events. And you kind of quickly started to tell me that you had a show at Fotografiska.
I casually dropped it in there.
You did casually drop it in there.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started seeing fragments come out about this show, which it isn't being billed as a show by Phillip Toledano at all. So
That's right.
what on earth are you up to?
Explain yourself, young man. I feel like I've been called into the headmaster's office. I'm in trouble again. I guess I have to talk about it in the context of what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, which is working with AI. Um, and the thing I think I mentioned to you is that I always have trouble with this phrase, but I am a conceptual artist. I find it hard to say that, and I feel like people are going to throw eggs at me when I say that. But so every idea has every project has a specific idea that requires specific execution, specific media to make it happen. So 4 years ago, I had an observation, which I'm sure plenty of people have had, that AI was going to radically change the way we interact with the truth. In the sense that because it exists, everything is true and nothing is true at the same time. The idea of photograph as evidence is gone. So I've been working for the last 3 or 4 years on this idea of historical surrealism, inventing history. And I've had 3 books published where I sort of invented historical time periods, the 80s in England, the 40s in New York, a Robert Capa story. But then I thought I need to expand that lie. I need to become more audacious with the lie. Because I was thinking about how
Can,
the
can
way
we
that,
that hold on.
wait, was that too much info?
Well, how do you just invent histories? Like, what do you mean, uh, another
Oh,
England or another
oh,
America or Robert
well,
Capa?
I was, okay, sorry, that I kind of glossed over that. Uh, okay, so I guess I started thinking about how, particularly in America, both history and facts have become infinitely elastic, and particularly under the current regime, it's so amazing. I mean, we see like he's inventing history actively. He reinvents history. He invents current history, past history, future history. I guess like the video of Gaza, the Trump video of Gaza as a luxurious seaside resort, whatever it is, he's inventing history. So I thought it would be interesting to reinvent a history of New York in the 1940s for a 10-year period. And um, and when you're inventing history in a 10-year period of a place, it's quite fascinating because you have to think of it like a movie. You have to think about the things that happen there, the tragedies, the disasters, the fashions of the time. You can invent new landmarks for another America. I also reinvented our relationship with animals, so that animals and humans are on the same kind of level. They're both sentient. So you could, and it was incredibly exhilarating. Be like, oh, I can reinvent anything I see fit. And because AI is so powerful in terms of the depth of the world you can create, you can go as far as your mind will go, which is really exciting and kind of terrifying because it means that the Achilles heel of AI is that an average idea looks great. So you have to have a really good idea. I'm basically saying my idea was a genius idea.
I'm okay with
So I did
that.
that. Well, so a lot of people are. But I did that. Then I was invited to a residency in Normandy, and it was the 40th anniversary or 50th anniversary rather, D-Day. And I started thinking, of course, about Robert Capa, about what are they called, the Magnificent 11 or something. The stories he shot 4 rolls of film, sent them to a lab assistant in England. The poor lab assistant screwed up all the film. 11 images survived, and I thought this is amazing because he's created this empty pocket of history that I can fill with AI. So I made a lost roll of Capa's film, um, and then instead of publishing it as a book, I took inspiration from the Mexican suitcase. Do you know that story? Yeah. So of course you do. So are you familiar with Robert Capa? Should I mansplain Robert
Please,
Capa to you?
please.
So I thought, well, instead of making a book, we'll make a box, a lost artifact. And in this box, you find a newspaper from 1944 with my Kappa images in it and a contact sheet of this lost roll of film. Uh, then I did another book called Another England, which is set in England in the 1980s, I guess, which is the last time I lived in England. So it's this very nostalgic, but quite sociological and slash political look at England from a distance. And then that brings us to my father.
But hold on.
But wait,
But wait.
yeah,
But wait. The thing that, I mean, there's so many interesting things about this. And I'm going to lead with my bias, which is that I don't think I like AI art. As in,
sure.
I don't like the aesthetic of it. And what is different about your work is that it feels like it's so cited in photo history, um, aesthetically, that you're like bending the rules. As in, this is not this like totally fantastical, ridiculous landscape you're looking at that feels like it's been computer generated. It feels really human. And it feels, I mean, like using Robert Capa is such a cheat, some maybe people would say, because
Well,
aesthetically they work.
right. I mean, well, two things. Well, actually, whenever I say two things, it's always like six things, but two things sounds shorter. So two things. Uh, the it's interesting because that's one of the charges that people levy against AI work is that, oh, it's, they call AI slop, right? But no one ever talks about iPhone slop, right? It's because it's wallpaper. We're used to seeing terrible iPhone pictures everywhere, and we don't think about them. And the reason that AI slop seems like AI slop is because if you're not a photographer and you don't understand the nature of an image, I've been taking pictures for 40 years. So if you don't understand the nature of photography, the nature of image, you haven't studied it, then you're going to use the default setting, and then you will get what everyone recognizes the AI style. But if you know what you're talking about, then you understand what you want from an image, and you will bludgeon AI into doing your bidding, stylistically, aesthetically, cognitively, creatively, all of it, right? Um, so funnily enough, the greatest compliment I had is an older assistant of mine he called me up talking about my AI stuff. He said, they look like the pictures you used to take when I worked for you, which is great because that's amazing to me. And it's true. Like the images I make with AI are very much like I conceive of them the same way I conceived of images when I was shooting with film or digital. Um, was that 2 points? I'm sure it's 2 points.
But so then you're just using AI to do things that you couldn't do kind of in camera.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean,
Great.
the leap for me when I was shooting as a photographer, I always worked with ideas. I always constructed stories. I mean, I had a book called Maybe where I envisioned all my possible futures. So I recreated I reimagined myself in the future. So I've been inventing imagery for years. It's just that AI is a lot, it can go a lot further.
Okay. Okay. So then you're like, come clean for us, Phillip Toledano. Uh,
Oh God.
does that then mean that the show at Fotografiska, which has been set up to be by your father, Edward Trevor, and to be showing works that you found of his undeveloped film, again, a bit like the Kappa story, they're not by him, are they? They're
Absolutely not. This is what I was going to say, is that I did these three bodies of work, and I thought I need to the Kappa. I was expanding the lie further, right, by making this artifact that was kind of found. Although but there was always a clear optical gap between the artist and the work. Everyone looked at the work like, okay, here's Phil making this work with AI. So I thought, let me expand the bubble of Deceit to include myself in it, right? Because what I'm seeing now is that Deceit is being packaged in a much more comprehensive manner, right? You're not only seeing images that lie, you're seeing having stories that lie, that accompany the images that lie. Politically, about the war that's happening now, about everything in America, right? So I thought I need to expand this bubble of Deceit and include myself in it, which I was really kind of, I had the idea and I was like, this is a great idea. And I was like, oh shit, this is a terrible idea because it's weird to have to lie about yourself. Uh, it's just a weird experience. So as you say, I thought I would take my father. My father's name was Edward Toledano, but his stage name was Edward Trevor when he was an actor, and he was an artist. So I thought I will take some of my father's history. He was a painter and a sculptor, and I will invent. I will steal in the same way I took from Robert Capa the history of his history. I would take from the history of photography, and as you point out in your post, you know, milk the Vivian Maier story, and I will make a story about my dad and these images I found, these negs I found of his work that I'd never seen before, and that were taken in the 30s and 40s. And I will make these images. And this is something I haven't really spoken about, but I will make images the way he used to make art, in the sense of with the same kind of feeling of his own art, because he was he was a surrealist. So when I was making these images, I was kind of thinking about what my dad might have found interesting. But I will also say that it was the hardest exercise I've done so far with AI, because when you're trying to make images that look like street photography, the genius of street photography it's kind of the genius of the mundane, right? Like it's just like these weird little things you just happen to catch. So to try and to conceptualize, it's kind of like the Seinfeld of photography. Like you're kind of trying to conceptualize images of nothing yet everything, if that makes any sense.
Mm,
That was a massive ramble.
not at all. I mean, I think that the cynic in me or anyone listening might immediately want to question you on, oh, okay, so is it just a marketing ploy?
No, oh, sorry, I forgot to say, and sorry to interrupt, but the reason I did this is because I think it's important to understand the convincing power of package deceit. So when people go to the show, you enter the show, you look at the work, it's presented as Edward Trevor, and at the end of the show, it's not. It's me, and I explain what I've done. And I think it's really important, because I think that we're so used to the idea of photography as truth. And only this year have I begun to see, in the great kind of arbiter of society, the Instagram comments section, people going, is this AI? This isn't real. Like, this has only happened this year. Last year that never happened. The year before that never happened. So I want people to understand how thoroughly they can be fooled, I guess. And I know a lot of people go, "Oh, you can tell it's AI right away," but maybe you can if you're a photographer or a curator or a gallerist or an academic. But if you're a civilian and you walk into that show, there's no way that you would think anything was unreal. You might think things were like, "Oh, that's kind of a curious picture," but there's nothing in there that I think that would give the game away. I know, but yeah, but you have the upper hand because you live in the world of art. You scrutinize. I'm talking about like a guy who just wants to come with a family and look at the pictures, because this is the majority of the world.
I maybe, and I don't know, right? I didn't get to see the show, and I'm mad about that, but I have been studying the pictures a little bit, um, both since I posted, and before, and I do think there are things in it, that I mean, I said it in the post, right? That, there's, like, slightly over-exaggerated physical features, whether it's, like, a sinewy neck of an old lady or, the muscles on the conjoined twins. I mean, the fact that they're conjoined the way that they are, um
Okay, you're right. That is the one image, but I did that on purpose. That's the one. But funnily enough, when people were looking at the show, I asked a few people, like, I pointed at that picture, what do you see about that photograph? And no one saw anything. I was shocked, because I thought, okay, this is the one image I'm giving to people to say, look, it's all fake. And no one had noticed it, which was crazy to me. But look, Carrie, you have a trained eye. Like, you spent your career looking at imagery. You have to take that hat off and look at it the way 99% of the world looks at imagery on their phones, which is, like this, right?
Absolutely, and listen, I think that you're picking up on a much longer string than maybe just the AI one, and I keep thinking back to, and I meant to look it up this morning before we did this interview, and I've failed, but there's this amazing photograph that was done during the Gettysburg War,
Matthew Brady,
Thank you. Where he
the
moved
Civil War.
Civil War
Yeah, yeah.
on Gettysburg,
Sure.
exactly, and he moved all the bodies. And I remember
Sure.
learning about that in undergrad and thinking, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, yeah, photography has always been a lie." Um, and one of your images in particular made me think of the Yves Klein, Leap into the Void image, where he's jumping out and he hired 2 photographers to make it look like he's jumping out of a apartment, and obviously that whole series or that image was about like the leap of faith that we take every time we look at an image and it presume that what we're looking at is real. So I think actually you're taking up yeah, this much bigger debate about um accepting mechanical reproduction as truth.
Well, well, you're right, and there's a couple of other things happening. In the show, there are 2 images that directly reference photo history. One is the Cartier-Bresson, the guy leaping across the puddle, which is at the dog. And the second is the Robert Capa picture, Death of a Loyalist Soldier, where the guy's flying backwards, which is in fact been proven to be fake in and of itself. So it's a fake image referencing a fake image staged by a real photographer. But the other the other thing I'm trying to talk about is the idea of like what makes us like a photograph. Like you look at these photos, if you walk into the show and you've digested the story about my father, so you're primed, there's no reason for you to think it's fake. And you're not a curator, you're not a journalist, you're just coming in to look at the show because you like photography. And you look at these images, you go, wow, these are amazing. Of course, he really caught some incredible moments. This Trevor guy, all this stuff. Part of the genius of photography, part of the reason why we love it, because someone saw that thing happen. And then once you realize no one saw that thing happen, but someone imagined it, is it less or more powerful? Does it lose its magic, or is it a different kind of magic? Like when you see a painting that someone's imagined, it's powerful because it's a painting and it came from someone's head. So these images came from my head. Are they less powerful because my father did not see them?
I mean, that's like one of those impossible, what is the point of
Yeah, no,
anything
sure.
questions. And
Yeah.
I think it's the right question to ask completely. Um, right, like I had to negotiate my own interaction with this project and with your entire project, right? Because I then did the Toledano deep dive. Um, because as I said to you, I have I look at most AI art and I have been like, I don't care because I don't like the aesthetic of it, but because this does feel like your earlier work and part of a much bigger project, I'm so sympathetic towards it, and that's confusing for
Against you.
me. Yeah,
You're like a hostage, basically.
a little bit, and I also think if you look at the Edward Trevor project today against the work you did before your father died. I can't remember the title of that series, and I would look down
Days
at
of my father.
Days of My Father. Um,
Mm.
there's a really incredibly personal narrative that's playing out here. Um, and I would urge anyone who's listening to go and look at that series in particular, but to look at all of your work, which is about like the deepest depths of human experience and have really nothing to do with faking emotion, which is probably where I fall apart when it comes to AI. Um,
Sure.
tell us.
But wait, what does faking emotion mean? What does that mean?
Oh,
You're paraphrasing 1850s philosophers now talking about photography.
uh, definitely. Right? Um,
Yeah,
I mean, I said to someone, totally off the record, y years ago, what you have said in print, that AI is just going to be another tool in the way that photography was a new
sure.
artistic tool. I believe that. I don't think we're there yet, um, and most of it is not great, but, like, I have been interested in, uh, how digital technologies or technologies in general will change the art that we're making, and I've been interested in that for a long time. I
Here's
mean,
here's a question. here's a question for you, Carrie. How long did it take? So let's say photography started in the 1850s. How long did it take before there was like a great photographer? Like I mean, not just the first ones, but like really good, like they were just good images. I wonder how long that took. Was it like Lartigue? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who was it? How long did that take? 10 years, 20 years, 2 years? I don't know.
Well, it's
I
Cameron
mean, think about it.
before it's Cameron before Lartigue. Yeah, I mean it's a while.
Was it, Matthew Brady, like you said? I mean, I don't know. I mean, AI has been 4 years, maybe. We are at the daguerreotype stage of AI. You know what I mean? Like I'm the geezer with the bloody cloak over his head, holding up the thing that's the explosive wand, the magnesium wand, or whatever whatever it was. That's where we are.
Fair point. And you're probably a bit further on than than the daguerreotype guy blowing himself up. I would have said. You're not electrocuting yourself, I presume. What what
Just
ab-
mentally.
what about your yeah, what about your earlier works? Can we talk about them?
Sure. Can we
They're
talk about real art, Phil?
no, no, and that's important, right? No, I think the interesting thing here, it's not lost on me that like the Robert Capa series is all about death ultimately, and you chose to go there with that. This series is all about your father who's no longer here, right? It's this
Sure.
imagined,
You make it sound like he's gone out to get milk.
yeah, sorry, your dead father.
That's
Sounds
right.
so
I know it's very awkward for people. Look, I'm so English. I have to make jokes about it because that's the way.
um yeah, but you haven't shied away from these like big topics, whether they're death or phone sex, um, or
Phone sex a big topic?
say that again.
Is phone sex a big topic?
Well, it's a taboo topic.
Well,
Um,
I'll tell you what's interesting is that often I will. A lot of the work I've made, and this I find quite magical, is that I'm unaware. I think I'm making it for one reason, but actually I'm making it for another reason. And when I had this big show, this retrospective years ago in Hamburg, the curator had kind of strung together all these works, and I was talking to her about it. She was explaining to me why I made that work, and I was like, oh my, I was like, holy shit, you are so right. I did not know that. The first book I ever made was a book called Bankrupt, and it was during the dot-com collapse in New York, in America, and I was photographing bankrupt offices and things that people left behind in the offices. It was like economic archaeology. It was like Pompeii in a way for me. And then she pointed out that uh, I did a book called When I Was Six about the death of my sister when I was six, and and I realized that after my sister died, there was all this stuff left in my house that belonged to her that I kind of became absorbed in. I played with those things, and I became really interested. And I guess that the bankrupt is an echo of that memory, right? So there's all these unseen threads that echo through my work that I'm sometimes unaware of. And I find that quite beautiful. Like when I was doing Days of My Father, the book, I was also working on a project called A New Kind of Beauty about plastic surgery. And they are two sides of the same coin. What is plastic surgery if not the denial of death and aging? So I was talking about the same thing, but I didn't know that's what I was talking about when I was doing the plastic surgery work. And it's such a glorious revelation to to have it pointed out that you are being guided in some ways by an unseen hand, and you don't even know it. Like it's beautiful to me, that revelation.
yeah, there
I
were
don't know why I'm talking about that. It made me slightly teary actually for some weird reason.
you're just trying to dodge the phone sex conversation, aren't you?
No, the phone sex thing. Well, the phone sex thing was I I was just interested. I remember just Stan Winston. Was that the Marvel Comics guy? There's a very famous picture from the 40s of a guy, people watching a drive-in movie, and there's a steam train in the background going You know what I'm talking about? It's a really beautiful image. But it's kind of a collision of a lot of technologies that were going to be gone. And the phone sex thing, I just found it interesting because it occurred to me that that was a technology that it was going to be like taking pictures of opium dens or something. Like you know, now that's gone. That idea. I'm really interested, and I guess a lot of my work is about things disappearing. You know, connected to my sister in some weird way. But I'm so interested, and I talk about this with my daughter about these things that I grew up with that were so important to me as a child that are gone. And on the most mundane things, like my daughter will never know the sound of a tape rewinding. Do you know what I mean? She'll
Mm-hmm.
never know the sound of cool waiting. These are just things that are kind of like they're just part of my life, and they will not be part of hers. And I'm interested in kind of remembering them in some way. And phone sex, weirdly enough, I don't know why, I just became interested in like the people and what that experience is like for them. But I also did that during when my mom died in 2006. I spent 3 years taking care of my dad, and that 3 years was insanely productive. I think I published like 3 books. I was doing like I did 5 different projects. I had a installation project about the Bush foreign policy. I was just crazy.
What?
And
Yeah,
now I'm doing AI refuse.
it's not refuse. I just think that there's I don't know, and like unapologetic bravery to all of it. I mean, the other series that comes to mind and jumped out was the Reluctant Father series, which is about your journey, um,
Sure.
yeah, becoming a dad and how
Yeah.
impossible that is. Uh, so I think that there's always this edge. Yeah, there's just always this edge to your work, whether it's the AI stuff or not, that's making us think about our kind of own relationship with these thresholds, maybe.
Mm. I mean, I guess Lulu does. My daughter saw that. I guess that when she was in junior high school, people Googled her for. I guess that's what you do if you're 13-year-old now. You Google your people you know, which is so crazy. And of course, Reluctant Father came up, and they're like, "Ah, your dad doesn't love you," which is so heartbreaking because I love him more than life itself. But you know, it was probably it was difficult for me, and I wish it hadn't been. But my father had died 3 months before she was born, and I just I was unmoored, um, and I didn't quite know what to make of the whole thing. But so she's writing a rebuttal
Good for her.
to that book. Yeah, and she sent me some of the stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, I do not come across very well here." But you know, look, I respect her, I admire for it. Um, but the thing I think that I told her that I feel about art, and this is the most obvious thing, and I'm sure all great artists know this, or either consciously or unconsciously, is you have to make work imagining that no one will ever see it, because the moment you imagine an audience, it changes the course of the river. It makes you hold back in some way, and then the moment you hold back, it's no longer it's not true, in or it's not as true as it could be.
Oh man, I love that you just brought up truth, because I
The irony.
the irony, right? The
Yeah.
irony, because going back to right how people have reacted even to my Instagram post about the show at Fotografiska is like it's AI, it's not real. Why do you care? And even gone so far as to say like, there are real artists out there making real work
Yeah, I
who
saw
you
that.
should be platforming. And I was like,
Yeah.
sorry, hang on. This is a real artist, like a real artist. And it's kind of why I probed some of the more difficult, like we could have talked about the more political work, but I wanted to talk about your personal stuff because it couldn't be more fucking real, frankly. No, now we're gonna have to slap the warning on this podcast so that teenagers can't listen to it. But uh, y- that question of truth is yeah, it's a funny one. Like, what
Well,
makes
the
it
sad,
real?
but the sad thing about the is that we are on the reflexive out. We live in an outrage economy currently, right? And so what people have is that Instagram. The analogy I make for Instagram is it's like driving a car past billboards, rolling down the window, shaking your fist at the billboard, and driving on to the next one. You're not absorbing. You're not thinking about it. You're not trying to look at the intent. You're not doing any of that stuff, which is precisely why fake, news is going to be so successful, because we're just driving in the car, shouting out the window, right? Um, so none of those people who, when they just see AI and they're outraged, they're not thinking about the reason I'm using AI is because AI is the very tool it's the instrument that is causing the demise of truth. And so to talk about the demise of truth, I must use that instrument. You know what I mean? It's not like I could use like etching or, what a, oil pastels or whatever. I mean, I've got to use the thing that's killing truth to talk about the thing, the death of truth. But it's interesting to me, like that's the reflex people have. They're not interested, and they're not interested in, they're just reacting. It's like a single cell protozoa.
But they're also good photos. Like, dare I say it, as someone who also has a working, maybe in-depth knowledge of that period of street photography, right? I've worked with the Harold Feinstein Trust for over a decade now, um, and via that had to actually sort of understand who the Photo League were and what was happening in New York in the period that you have referenced.
Plundered.
Mhm. And, I I was sat looking at some images thinking, if I got to live with one of these, like, would I want to live with one of these? And there's, like, 2 or 3 images that, yeah, I'd love to live with them, and I think that they would, mm, like, or my relationship with them would change just as my relationship with Harold Feinstein's images change every day that I look at them. Um, so yeah, you've really given me a conundrum, frankly.
I mean, I would say that I feel like, isn't that the best thing art can do, is present you with a conundrum to make you. I mean, I remember talking to my father when I was a kid, teenager. I have such a clear memory of this, and he said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said I want to be an artist, and he was an artist, and he was like, "No, you don't want to be an artist." I said, "I do," and he's "Okay, well, what kind of art do you want to make?" And I said, "The dream would be to make something that changes people's minds about something, that makes people." And I'm not sure. I I'm pretty sure this conversation happened, but I could have imagined it just to self-aggrandize myself now. But I'm pretty sure it happened. And that's the art that I prize the most is art that I look at, and I have three reactions. One is I'm just so jealous and angry that I didn't think of it myself. I'm just like, shit, I can't believe I didn't see this. And then the other one is like when the idea reveals itself. Do you look at a thing, you're like, oh, and you kind of dismiss it, and then you understand the idea, and it's like the dawn. It's like the sun rising, and you are amazed at the kind of the depth of, just the kind of, it's just surprise. Like there's nothing better for me than being surprised when I look at something. And that's always been my dream with art, is just to is to make people reconsider something. So, I mean, you and the funny thing about when you're talking about the AI outrage is that I really believe this. In 2 or 3 years' time, no one will give a shit. No one's gonna care. No, and we'll be outraged about something else.
Yeah. Or maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, people will have started to use it with the same sort of, um, sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities that you are. Uh,
Well, you know what's gonna happen is that there will be an artist who does something that's so genius, and I guess it's not me at the moment, but there'll be an artist who does something so genius with AI that it will be irrefutable. That you'll be a buffoon if you can't understand how great that thing is. And that's my goal with AI, is to make it so that you have, if you look at the work and you understand the idea, you're you're blown away with the genius. But that's not happening. But that would be the goal, right? And then you know it's like people being against like modern architecture, and they walk into a particular building, and the building makes them feel something, and they're like, okay, this building makes me rethink. Like at the talk in AI, when at the talk of Berlin, when I give my talks, artist talks about AI, there's always a couple of people who are super mad every time, and they refuse to be anything other than angry. But then there are always a couple of people who go, you kind of made me reconsider it. And to me, that's incredible. That's a gift.
Hmm. Okay. 2 questions before I let you go about your business. One,
Which is nothing.
um, if you could own any artwork, whole world, what would it be, and why?
Oh God. What was shit? This is gonna make me sound. Um, oh God, I don't know. There's so much stuff. Henry Moore sculpture, maybe, because my father loved Henry Moore, and I kind of grew up. I like loving the same thing that he loved. Um,
That's the perfect answer.
oh, and maybe a Holbein for the same reason, because my mother loved Holbein, and I love the 15th, 16th. I love the 16th century, that kind of painting, and I'm a history nerd, so
You gotta go see the new show at the RA. Amazing. 17th century.
of Holbein.
No, it was the 17th.
Oh, is that the thing you talked about on Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that looked amazing. Yeah.
Michelina Wautier.
Mm.
Oh, so good. Um,
Yeah.
okay, and then last question, and this is like my get out of jail free card, but is there anything that I should have asked you or that you wanted me to ask you and I've failed?
You failed terribly, Carrie.
Hmm.
No, I feel like, although you did, you sent me a post this morning where we were chatting about before coming on here about on Instagram about that woman who said she feels like photography is like painting and AI is like photography now. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's interesting that I think there's a little groundswell of people who are beginning to understand exactly what you're trying to say. Um,
Mm.
and she obviously is, uh, and you know, has a huge following, and that her reel is the comments in that section in her reel are really interesting because some people are like, well, yeah, of course, but they're not diehard
Right.
art people. They're
Right.
diehard photography, stylist, fashion people, and fashion has always been ahead. You know, she makes the point that Vogue initially used illustrators for their covers and were reticent to allow photographers to shoot the covers, right? And now we think of Vogue, we think only of
Sure.
the great photographers, right? Penn, Avedon, all of
Yeah.
them. So I think anyone that wants to argue against artists adopting AI into their practice need to brush up on some of their history. I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying that.
Actually, I think not. I think that's the right thing to say. And I also think another thing, which is that your job as an artist or my job as an artist is to be curious. That's my only job. My job is to open every window and consider every vista, right? And I would be it would be like, why wouldn't I want to consider it? At least look at it, and then if it's not for you, it's not for me. I mean, when I first started using it, I thought it's not for me because I couldn't make it do the things I wanted to make it do, and I had to really hammer away to make it do things I wanted to do. Um, the other thing I would say is that look what photography, and this is pure conjecture, but look what photography did to painting in the 19th century. Like did we talk about this? I can't remember if we did. In my head, there's a conversation that's happening between all the impressionists hanging out at the de Magot or wherever in Paris. And they're like, holy shit, look at this photography business. Look at the way it can just take landscapes, better than we can paint them. We've got to do something different. Next thing you know, have impressionism, right? I have no idea if those things are interconnected or not. But there's gravitational forces exerting it themselves on those two art forms, and that's the same thing happening with photography and AI. They're exerting gravitational pull on each other. So where will they push each other?
Who knows? Who knows? Thank you for coming on and setting the record straight.
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you for having me, Carrie.
At
Thanks
least
for the
everyone now
questions.
knows that Edward Trevor is a series. It's not you.
Sure.
He's not you. It's not
Right.
you. don't know.
It is me. It's very weird to have a show where it's not you, but it is you.
Well, thank you. I hope that we can talk again sometime soon.
Thank you. That'd be great. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?